is not working. You cannot see
Oh,
me.
that's Brandon. Yeah. Hello.
Oh, the hostess is shown.
Oh,
Hello.
now I can see everyone.
Hi, Brayden.
Hello, how's it going?
Great, you?
Not too bad, thank you. How do I sound? I've got a new microphone.
You sound fine.
Great.
Sounds good.
Awesome, great. Let me know if that changes because I haven't used this guy yet with this program.
Mhm.
Pretty good out of the box, it seems.
Ah, good. Oh, wow, how many people are here? A few, 10, awesome. Very cool. So how's everyone doing?
Great.
I think I asked that already.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm nervous, but as soon as I start talking, it's gonna go away. It's gonna be fine.
I'm exactly the same way. Nervous all the way up to getting on the stage, and then it's fine.
Yeah, then you wonder why you panicked for no reason.
Until something actually does go wrong.
Well, don't say that.
A terrible, terrible thing. Scenery flying everywhere. I don't know. Yeah.
Amartys, can you help me?
Sorry, can who hear what now?
Can you hear me? Mara Price?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I cannot make the video work. So
That's okay.
anyway.
As long as we can hear you.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
I don't have video either. It's fine.
Yeah, as long as your screen share works, it's all good.
Yes.
All right, so I think we may as well get things started, and I'll continually monitor SVS for people scrambling for the link. Yeah, all right, so welcome to the third Informal Student Showcase. So, Vanessa, take it away, I suppose.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, free screen share.
Oh, good.
Is this working?
Okay. Oh yeah, that works
Oh,
great.
yeah.
There we go. Yep.
Yay,
Fantastic.
it
Awesome
works.
possum.
Okay. Right, and I have my notes here on my second monitor. Okay, it looks good.
Oh, beautiful.
All right, so I'm gonna be demonstrating in Photoshop, my favorite program, and we're gonna do a simple character design from a photo. I'm gonna show you how I go from like reality to my very stylized style.
Awesome.
And yeah, I hope that's interesting. So my style was a very, very long journey to get to where it is now. Realism actually comes easiest to me. It's like my strongest natural affinity, but it's never how I wanted to draw. I've always been really interested in like picture book styles and very stylized, but it seemed to be like black magic to me how people made that happen. It just seems so much easier to me to like turn off my brain and just observe and copy one-to-one the reality. When you want to stylize something, you have to do like additional steps of codifying what you see, simplifying it, exaggerating, and there's a whole process that involves more creativity and more thinking. So I'm gonna try to show you what is my thinking when I do that. And
Awesome.
yeah, it's the first thing that popped to my mind to do, because when I was in school, I was so wishing that someone would do this for me. No one would explain how that worked. I even had a class in my animation program that was called Simplification for Animation. And I was so looking forward to that. I thought I was going to learn all of the secrets, but it just turned out to be a series of assignments where they will tell us, okay, here's a photo, simplify it.
Oh God.
I was like, okay, but how? You have a technique? Do you have tips?
Please teach
Anything?
me.
Please, but yeah, no tips were forthcoming.
The delights of school. All right then.
Yeah.
No, the horrors of school.
The horrors of school.
My program was actually really, really good, but this one class was a crushing disappointment. But, you know, I figured it out at some point. As I'm sure all of you had, you all have wonderful styles. All right, so I always thought that when you have a very stylized style like this, that the artist, that was what they were picturing in their minds to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Like this lion, for example, that it would be fully formed like this in my mind, and I would just put it down on paper. Like my world in my mind looks like this, but that's not exactly how it works. I prepared some photos. So when we think of a cat, this pops into our minds, right?
Yeah.
So when we want to make it into something like this, there are a lot of additional steps in the middle to make that happen. And so, and there's no right or wrong, really. It's just about what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to express. So we have to decide, what do we keep and what has to go? And what do we want to exaggerate and what do we want to minimize? So I got this little guy from pexels.com. It's a site that has some copyright-free photos, so we don't get into trouble. And
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you how we'll do a character design based on this photo. I'm going to use the same pose and everything, and I'm going to try to explain every decision that I make to simplify this guy. I think I'm going to even draw on the photo itself, though usually I don't do that.
Sure, no, that'll be awesome.
Okay, so with my style, most of the time, my main goal is cuteness, right? I try to make it as adorable as I possibly can. So I try to, when I codify my reference photo, I try to emphasize cuteness as much as possible. Usually that means I try to make it, oh God, this is lagging. Okay, no, it works, all right. So I try to make it look younger, happier, rounder. This guy is already very round, so I purposely took a photo that I wasn't gonna have too much to do.
Yeah, so you're looking for like keywords, I guess, to express is what you're saying.
Yeah,
awesome.
Exactly. So that's gonna help me decide, you know, what I keep and what has to go. When you know what you're trying to do, that helps. So the first thing that I would do is start with a very big brush because I want to identify the main shapes. So using a big brush, I don't get lost in all of the details. I'm just gonna identify the main shapes. So there's this big round shape here and something that looks like this. And the head here. And then it'll look like this. And like this. So already it's pretty simplified.
No, absolutely.
Right? When we just go about with the big shapes.
So do you ever like exaggerate at this point? Like go like, I want this central shape to be bigger?
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm going to show you.
Oh, sorry.
So when trying to make it look younger, one of the big things is making the head bigger. So maybe I would make this head more exaggerated. And what I'm seeing here is the big line here, right? I think that could be all one line. It doesn't need to be like this little here. I don't think that's very much needed. I would probably make that into one shape, right? So I would simplify this like that. And then the wing, I would probably tuck it in. Maybe I would do something like this. I'm lagging a little bit. Are you guys?
No, you seem fine to us.
I don't think we're going to see it on our end because we're like by the time it gets to us, it looks pretty fluid.
Yeah,
Right.
I think you'll be fine. It's just your computer may not like running Zoom at the same time as Photoshop.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a lag between my brush strokes when it actually appears on screen. Oh, well.
Dear. Oh, you mean like a lag between you stroking and it appearing on Zoom, or like you actually have brush lag?
Yeah, brush lag on
dear.
my Photoshop.
Oh dear.
Oh,
yeah,
well.
I bet it looks way better for us than for you.
Probably.
Yeah, we haven't noticed, but if it gets awful for you, we may need to figure something out.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So
Okay.
another thing to make things look cuter and younger is a big forehead. And that works on everything. And big eyes. So maybe I would do something like this. And the beak is so small compared to the body of the bird. I think I would emphasize that. That would be cute, right? Maybe a tiny, tiny little beak. So maybe I would do something like this.
Very cute.
And so birds, apparently this bird has all black eyes, but it can be a little bit creepy. I would probably do a little, you know, something like this for mine so that it looks a bit more, less creepy. Or maybe I would go just, you know, happy bird.
Oh, yep.
Completely just a
Universal happy bird.
Yes, so that's already pretty cute.
It is adorable.
For the details, now this guy looks very fluffy. I think that's very cute too. So I do want to translate some of that, but I don't want to get lost into details. So my main concern here would be, how do I translate the fluffiness with the bare minimum that I can? So maybe I would do like a little fluffy tail like this.
That's definitely something I have a hard time with, is expressing stuff like fluffiness and volume without going overboard with like little feathers and yeah.
It's a difficult balance. This is something that I learned more about when I was in animation. It's very important to simplify when you're gonna animate. And in my program, how they did this is everything that we animated, we had to design ourselves. You learn pretty quickly that yes, if you want, you can make the complicated design, but do you want to sleep in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's good advice.
Sure.
So quickly you're like, okay, maybe she doesn't need 12 braids. Maybe I can do about the same effect with just 5 braids, and that will save me a lot of work. And there's a lot of examples like that in animation. Like for instance, Ursula from The Little Mermaid, she's an octopus mermaid, but not really. She only has 6 tentacles instead of 8. And that's a very smart choice from the character designers, because it probably saved them thousands and thousands of hours of work, and that translates to like millions of dollars, and no one cares that she's missing 2 tentacles. So it definitely wasn't the right place to spend the budget. So it was a very smart choice.
Oh no,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, so whenever you're thinking, okay, how I can do this economically. So maybe just a little
Yeah, there's an Aladdin character sheet where they show like the super basic shapes that all the characters are made of.
Yeah,
like Genie's like a weird comma.
So maybe by doing just these 3 strokes, I could you know, express that this little guy is fluffy. Or maybe I could do something like this, you know, a few of these. And of course here, you can iterate as much as you want. And even for the shapes, maybe I would do another version. Sometimes I have a very clear idea in my mind what I want to do, and sometimes I don't. So I can try different versions, emphasizing different things. So maybe for this one, you know, here I see like the head is a little flat. And there's a little bit of a corner here. So maybe I would do, maybe I would emphasize that and do like a little corner.
What about the feet?
Yeah, I could do the feet, right? I think
Bird feet are the most annoying things, I think, to draw.
Something I love, yeah.
Like tiny, tiny little, maybe even tinier than this. Maybe that would be cute. That would emphasize just how much like they're getting lost in the big fluffy body.
Yeah.
I think I could make him bigger too.
I was just going to say, my favorite thing to do with birds is just not draw the feet. Like
yeah.
their feet are in their body, just kind of disappeared in the feathers. It works most of the time.
Yeah.
Or just draw
looks
stick
like
feet.
I could make him like a real chunky boy.
Ooh, chunky boy.
Very, very chunky. And I often do that. I start with a sketch and then I modify on the sketch. Like I take the lasso and I move stuff around directly from my sketch. Maybe I want this to be closer or something. Maybe I could do the wing a bit separated. Or maybe I can make the wing smaller. So there's no right or wrong, but you can try different things, emphasizing different things, as long as you know where you're going with it, like what's your goal. And like here, that there's a shape like this too. So maybe I would, maybe I would do like this instead.
Okay.
Something.
So usually how long, I'm just curious, how long do you think it usually takes you to fully explore a character like this? And like, how long do you usually take with this stage?
It really, really depends. Sometimes I know right off the bat what I want. Like sometimes I see my reference photo and I think, oh, okay, I'm gonna emphasize this and this, and immediately I go for that. Sometimes I'm not sure exactly what I'm going for, so I'm gonna try a lot of things. And honestly, when I know right away what I want, I don't tend to do 50 iterations. I know maybe I should.
Yeah.
But when I know what I want, usually I don't. But I actually had an example, right? So my first children's book was I had to do a little panda. And these are the two that I was really hesitating between at the end. But I think I did like 30 of these. And this is a lot for me. Usually I maybe do like 2 or 3 before I really zoom in on what I want. But this one, I really didn't know. And I really like this, I called it the panda bean. I really like this bean shape. I thought it was very designy. It was really like focused on the design more than the character, and I really liked that. I thought I was gonna have a ton of fun like playing with this shape. But for the book, since I had to do many different poses and expression, and I thought with the big head it would be cuter and it would be more expressive. It would be easier to pose the character in different ways. So that's why I ended up going with this one.
You went with number 2, sorry?
Yeah, I ended up going with number 2, just for the specific purposes of the book. But there was nothing wrong with the first one either. It really depends on circumstances.
Absolutely.
And I think I asked the forum for help too on this one. And you guys had really good.
I remember that. I can't remember which one I voted for.
I remember that too. I remember that whole discussion.
I had some really good ideas from you. Yeah. So,
Cool.
do you have any questions?
Yeah, Vanessa, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
When you draw the bird, do you think about which type of bird, or do you consider things like that, like especially with bird and flowers? I was just curious.
It's a very good question, and it really depends. If the focus of the illustration is the bird, and I want to do a specific type, then of course I want to show what species it is. So I'm gonna, try to identify the defining features that I need to keep to identify that. But if it's just a bird in the background, and I just want to communicate that there's a bird there in the tree, but it doesn't really matter what it is, then I'm probably going to simplify it more and erase more defining features because it doesn't matter.
Oh,
fair enough.
That's clever.
So I'm curious, in this particular case, which defining feature do you think you would keep to make it so that this bird would be recognizable?
I think I would probably modify the beak, because I made it very small here. And I think don't know what happened there. I think the small pointy beak is the defining feature, and the markings, I would emphasize maybe that marking looks like a heart to me. Isn't that cute? Maybe
It's very cute.
Emphasize that heart shape here, and maybe the eye too. Maybe I would do this instead to keep the eye shape and that pointy here.
Yeah, that'd do it.
I would make him a very chunky boy.
I'm going to have to use that daily from now on. Next time I see my nephew, I'm just gonna be like, "You're a real chunky boy." He's like 1, so he doesn't care.
Did I draw? Yeah, I drew it on the same layer as the. Damn it.
I do that all the time. I feel your pain.
So I would do something more like this to emphasize this,
Mm.
that it's this kind of bird. I brought more photos
Ooh,
because
awesome.
this one was very easy, right? I remembered having a hard time with the toucan.
Oh, okay, nice.
I
Yeah.
drew a toucan before, and I had more trouble with this one because there's a very, like, it's subtle, the change between the body and head. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to go full on to merge all of this together, like maybe
Yeah.
something like this
Mm.
with the. I'm going very fast, so it's not very precise, but so do something very, very stylized like this, which would be perfectly valid, but my main concern is making it cute, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to make like a bigger head. So in the end, I ended up emphasizing the head more than it is in a real toucan.
Okay.
And I ended up doing something more like this, and then a really like big beak, maybe a bit shorter but thicker, and
That's very cute.
and like a big eye. You would
Oh.
like,
Oh, yeah.
hello.
The big eye and the eyelashes do help.
Yeah. So, and I think I made like a big paws like this too. So yeah, it really depends what you're trying to achieve. And if you remember that when you make these decisions, it really helps guide your decisions. And by deciding what you, by emphasizing different things, you have so many possibilities for different designs with the same photo,
Mm-hmm.
the same reference. Also, I found this one, which I thought, what an interesting shape, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I would be so tempted to like follow this line. Oops, maybe I'm gonna go a bit more transparent so you can see better. I would be so tempted to just follow this one line here.
That's my instinct with everything, is to find that one line
Yeah.
that makes
So
it.
it wouldn't,
Yeah.
it wouldn't, you know, follow my cute rule, but how fun is that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course,
That's
when
awesome.
you go with more complex, like humans and even like a cat or any more complex things, the birds are fairly simple. That's why I chose them for this exercise. But
Interesting.
the more complex you go, the more decisions you have to make. I find cats are very hard to draw.
I hate cats. Sorry, I hate drawing cats. I also hate cats, but yeah.
You could do something like this. It looks completely different from my style, but it's so fun.
Ness, can I ask you? Can I ask, when you're making these designs, do you take into consideration how easy it is going to be to then turn those designs in space?
Good question.
Does that affect?
It's a very good question. There's so many things to consider at the same time. Usually the first time when I do that first drawing, I don't really think about it, just because there's so many things to think about that you have to focus on something. But afterwards, after I have my first design, then I would draw another one from the front, and from the other, I would draw all the other angle. And usually after you work a little bit, you can solve it. But of course, if I end up on a design that I really like, but I can't solve an angle, like this little guy may be difficult. Birds in the front view are so difficult.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Maybe this, something like this, maybe. But if the design was a bit more complex, to keep the features of this bird, if it had I don't know, if it had some feathers, I would have to solve how I do this in the front or in the back or whatever, so it's still recognizable. But I usually do this later, and sometimes I will think, okay, this feature just doesn't work, so I'll change it instead, and I'll do something like this, and then I go back to my first drawing, I will change it. So I go between all the different angles and just adjust until I have something, you know, a full turnaround that I like. If it is for a book, of course. If it's for a standalone illustration, sometimes I don't go through the trouble.
Oh yeah, then who cares?
But that's
You
a very
said-
good question.
Sorry, you said that humans are more challenging and cats, and I agree with cats and humans, but I have trouble simplifying human like arms and legs. I'm getting
Mhm.
better with heads, but arms and legs, I don't know how to simplify those, let alone hands.
Yeah, that is very, very complicated. Especially hands. It's something that it really helps to start from a reference photo, because even if you want to end up with something really, really simple, the one important detail that you keep that makes it realistic, that makes it that people understand what pose it is, that's the one detail that you want it to be from reality, you know, from the truth. But then again, when you start with real photo and you want to end up with, you know, something like this, sometimes you get lost in the details of the real photo, and it's just, it gets harder to simplify it. But what really helped me was copying a lot of other artists. And when I say copying, it's just not tracing their work, but borrowing their style for a few exercises.
Yeah.
And you get to learn how they solve it and what is comfortable for you. Like maybe, oh, this one artist, I don't really like how they draw hands at all, but this one, draw them like this way, and that feels comfortable to me. And maybe you mix it with the way that another artist does that. And that really helped me to find what features I wanted to keep, because every artist solves this simplification puzzle a different way.
Thanks.
I have a comment. If you go to Pinterest, I don't know how to pronounce it. Pinterest.
Pinterest.
And you write character design, and you say hands, character design hands, character design. You're gonna find a lot of ways to simplify hands.
Yeah.
And all adults, children, cartoons, everything.
It's a very good comment. Pinterest is such a treasure trove for artists. You don't necessarily think of going to Pinterest unless you're looking for a recipe or like a scrapbooking project. But for illustration, there's so much on there. And
I end up living on Pinterest, so I have to reel back.
Yeah, it's a deep, dark rabbit hole. It really is.
yeah, like, wait, I'm just gonna do the like, so there's, it's done. Here, done. Another thing to consider. Sorry?
It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Another thing to consider when you're doing this is that you also want to have a strong design. You don't want to focus 100% of your energy on the simplification and forget to have like an attractive character design. And the way that helps me most to remember to make a strong design is to have unity and variety. And to me, that was weird. It's something that a teacher said to me, and I was like, isn't that opposites? How can I have both unity and variety in the same? But
Yeah.
so you introduce variety by having different types of something. Could be shapes, lines, texture. But you have unity by having one of those elements be more dominant than the other. So if you have a lot of straight lines in your design, then you have one curve once in a while. So you have more of this, but you have a little bit of this too. And this works for proportion as well. So here in this design, the head is about like, I don't know, a third, a quarter. The body is here, and then the tail is like this. So this is the bigger part, and then, you know, a little bit bigger, and the head is the smallest part. So you have variety, but you have something that dominates. If your character design was like a head, a body, and legs, then you have a snowman, not a very good one, right?
Absolutely.
So
All these principles I keep forgetting or just forget to
Yeah.
use.
It's just so much to think about at the same time. You know, sometimes I'm 2 hours into a character design. I'm like, oh crap, I completely forgot to focus on this thing. But then you can go back and, you know, make some adjustments. Do you think we have time to, you know, finish this little dude?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, we got nothing but time. I actually, sorry, I forgot to tell everyone, I actually bit the bullet and paid for a month of Zoom, so we're good for time.
Oh, really? How much was that? They can pitch in.
That was $20. I'll tell you what, if we run through our whole log and we get more, I may start asking for a small pitch in, but
Cool.
I'm fine for now.
Thank
I actually
you.
applied for a grant from the BC government to do this, so we'll see what happens.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Very clever.
You went all in.
Yeah, well, why not, right? Money's there.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so maybe we're going to do something like this.
Yeah, finish up. I want to see it.
Okay, so the next step will be to decide on my colors. And I have a little bit of a, I don't know, I've never seen anyone use this technique before. I don't know if it's a real technique or it's just something that I do.
Okay.
But it's what works the best for me. I deleted my bird. I wanted to take some of the colors from it. Oh, well.
no.
Okay, so I start with like a random color that I think works okay. But the thing with colors is that you don't want to get too attached to any one of them because they interact with each other so much. So as soon as you introduce a second color, you have to adjust them so that it works with the second color. And then the third color, you have to adjust the first two. So I always keep very flexible. And the way I do that is I do a very quick color test, and I keep all my colors on different layers, even if I do it so quick like this. So then I can click Control U to open the U saturation.
Aha.
And I just modify my colors directly to adjust it to the, you know, to the second color. So maybe I do something like this. And then I'm gonna try to do that orange pattern, the heart-shaped one that was on the bird. So I pick something that I think looks okay at random, but I'm always gonna end up adjusting it because it's never okay. My first pick it's never, oh, this actually isn't too bad.
It's not bad.
But maybe I would do it a little bit more vibrant, maybe a bit more yellow. Maybe something like this.
Cute.
So yeah, I use the Control U.
Is that an
religiously.
adjustment layer?
Sorry?
Is that an adjustment layer, or is it you're just modifying it and then modifying it again and then modifying it again?
Exactly. Each color, like this is on a separate layer, this one is on a separate layer, and this one is on a separate layer. So I just go directly on the layer. Like this is just my color test. It's so quick, so I'm not married to any of this.
It's a real good way of doing it.
Yeah, the other, like what I typically do with that is I'll use an adjustment layer instead, but I guess it doesn't really matter because you can always just switch it.
Yeah, it's the adjustment layer, it does the same thing, but the adjustment layer is non-destructive. So you can always go back to your original. Here I'm going so fast that I really don't care about the original. I don't want to keep it,
Right.
so I don't bother. But if you do something like really good, like if you do the grayscale technique where you have your underpainting in gray that is all detailed, and you don't want to ruin that. You want to keep it original of that.
Can I ask you again, what's an adjustment layer? I'm not getting it.
So an adjustment layer, you click here on the like circle that's half black, half white, and you have different effects. So the one I was using is hue saturation, but you can do color balance, you can do brightness. And it's separate. So it's a layer like this, and I can do exactly the same thing that I was doing earlier, changing the hue, the saturation, but I can remove it and I can adjust it, and I haven't destroyed anything that was already there.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
I
Oh,
can
that's
also-
so awesome.
One thing with that, make sure that if you use it on the different layers, make it a clipping mask
Yeah,
so that it doesn't mess up the other stuff.
exactly. So if I put it on top, this affects everything that's underneath. But if I wanted it to be just on this last one, then I can clip it to this last one. So now it just affects this one. Something that you could do that I do often is, so let's say I'm done with this. So then maybe I create an adjustment layer on top to change, like maybe I want all of this to be lighter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So maybe I want to affect all of the colors at the same time to keep the harmony that I work so hard for. But a lot of times what I do is I'm just gonna merge it because I do this so quickly that.
Yeah.
So
I suppose.
Sorry, what?
I suppose if you really wanted to and you wanted to keep one but keep exploring, you could just group them flat, like copy paste and move it off to the
There's
side
many
and
ways
keep
to
going.
do it. You could
Yeah.
you could make this into a group, and yeah. Of course, you don't
Thank you
want to
very
end up
much.
with it. Sorry, what?
Thank you.
Yeah, clipping masks are so great. They're very useful, and
They are
adjustments
awesome.
there are amazing, especially once we get into the more finished look. We don't want to be wasting our time by destroying what we're doing as we go if we change our minds. But I change my mind often. That's why I have the history here. Instead of Control Z, I don't want to depend on that. So I have my history here if I want to go back,
Nice.
from a long time, then I can do that. And since I work in vector with every single thing on a different layer, I end up with a lot of layers. So that's why I have my layer panel here all the way down. So I have space for all my layers. Right, so this wood, maybe I make it lighter because it's so similar to the bird, or very dark. Oh, I like this.
Yeah.
Very, very dark. So it contrasts, and maybe the top here, but that's too light compared to the other. So I adjust like this forever.
And just keep on going until you're like, that's perfect.
Yep. And if I added a background, then I would probably have to change every single color because that would affect everything. So usually if I have a background, I will start with that because it would affect all of the other colors. So
Yeah,
start with the main masses and then work your way to details.
nice.
I want this maybe a little bit more blue, maybe a bit lighter. Oh, yeah, that's cute. I like this.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna keep it really, really simple. So I'm just gonna, yeah, it may be a bit sharper, more contrast. Yeah, I like this. So when I'm done, I just merge everything and I put it aside for a reference.
Okay.
And then I start my actual colors. Usually I create a folder called colors. So I don't, and then I just pick the colors and I start doing my vector. So this is the pen tool. This is what I use to, did I lose everyone else?
No, I think everyone's here. They're just, they're muted because they're watching so intently.
I don't see their cameras anymore.
People turn off their cameras to save bandwidth. Like,
Okay. Oh, hi.
yeah, we don't.
Okay.
I could turn mine off too. I don't think it matters much.
Okay. Okay. I was just wondering if you all were still here.
Yep, they're all here.
We're here. Right. Cool. So let's continue.
We're just so fascinated.
Right. So I'm gonna start tracing the body. I just made a bunch of. I just make a bunch of points with the pen tool.
I've really got to learn how to use the pen tool.
I'm gonna try to explain it. It's really easy. So you can make a path like this with the pen, and now I'm pressing Control and clicking on this and dragging it. No, Okay, I have to select one thing, not the entire shape. Sorry. Control, and then I drag. No, Alt.
There we go.
Not Control, Alt. I usually do this without really thinking about it. So I just trace my sketch by modifying these points and try to trace my shape as best as I can. Sometimes, because I really like the spontaneity of like a quick sketch. So sometimes what I do is I sketch really, really quick. And then when I do this step of vector, I follow my crappy sketch to the T.
Okay.
So it has all of the, you know, it's skewed a little bit and it's not perfect because the vector can look very perfect. So sometimes I just do a very, very quick sketch so that I can keep some of that spontaneity when I trace a vector.
Okay, so that's why you don't just start with vector and make shapes.
Yeah, that would be probably very, it would look cold. And
Yeah.
very straight and symmetrical.
I think that's the problem a lot of people have when they start out and they're like, oh, I can just make shapes with the pen tool. Then look, it's perfect. And that's the problem. Is that it looks perfect.
It can work with graphic design. Sometimes, like right now, I'm designing a digital planner for my online shop. Mm-hmm. And I just went straight, you know, with the shapes. But this is an illustration. It's not graphic design. So and after I'm done tracing my path, I click here on shape. And it transforms it into a shape.
Awesome.
It will take automatically the properties that you have selected, the shape. So sometimes it will do something from your last project. Maybe it will be a black outline or something, and you're like, oh, I have to go back. So you can click on shape and then modify these. Here I already had no stroke, and this was like the main color is selected, but you can change it here, change, you know, make whatever color you need. And so we're just gonna keep going. Do the little wing. Since this one here follows the body, so I'm just gonna create a clipping mask. So I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, so it's control when you wanna drag it. And when you wanna spread out, it's Alt. Yeah. Awesome. So when I draw, I always have my my left hand on my keyboard shortcut. I think I'm gonna need to drink some water at some point.
I feel the same way. I just slugged a cup of coffee, so I'm dried out.
I think someone was trying to say something. Maybe not.
Maybe not. Once again, we're held in rapt attention.
So we're gonna do the shape here. Usually I would sketch this shape. No, I haven't, so I'm just gonna kind of wing it.
Okay.
Something like this. You can add as many points as you need to make this this shape follow exactly your sketch.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess just playing around with it after a little while, you get really good at knowing exactly where those curves need to go.
Yeah, I can eye it pretty good now, but at the beginning, you know, we would spend a lot of time just adjusting those curves.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes you come across something that's a little bit more complicated, and you have a the worst is spirals, but I have gotten pretty good at spirals too. But you know, you have to really, yeah, it's not too bad.
Okay, yeah, no, it looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, but it's really finicky to create something really precise. Anyway, it's hours of pleasure, hours of fun, and when you want to close your shape, you go back, you will see a little circle. I'm pointing my screen as if you can see. You will see a little circle, and that means that that's where you can close it. And if you create another path, sometimes you will see a little link thingy or if you lose your path, you will see a little link. You can get back to your path. Of course, if you
Nice.
right click, you have more options. You can delete all that nonsense and start over. Where are we? Okay, branch.
Ness, do you do everything in vector?
Not always. You'll see the next step. We're gonna go off vector and we're gonna add some life to this. Also, sometimes, depending on the project, but sometimes I just trace the shapes with a brush when I want a little bit more.
So like the pandas, those pandas were in vector or were they raster?
In the book, the final, they were in vector,
Wow.
but what I showed you was it was a sketch, so that was just hand drawn. But I did end up tracing those, and maybe I can show you. I still have all of this on my computer.
I'm the same way. I never throw anything away. I got to do some digital housekeeping though at some point.
No, it's not big enough. If I open one, my computer is gonna freak out and take 1,000,000 years to open it, probably. But oh, not too bad. Okay, so yeah, the shapes are vector, but as you can see, I add some textures on top.
Yeah.
I like to break it up a little bit. All this stuff like this here, it's hand drawn. All the little lines I hand draw on top, like the details in the feather here, I hand draw on top. And then I add some sort of watercolor texture to this to make it just a little bit more livelier. I've always really liked watercolor, so I make my own watercolor textures and I add them on top. And I think that has a little something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the vector style is it's very common and it can look a bit clinical. I wanted to have something a little bit more unique, so I added this. And it was a bit difficult at the beginning to convince publishers that my work was suitable for picture books. They
Oh,
wanted
okay.
me, yeah, they wanted me for educational and they wanted me for website graphics, but they weren't sure about the picture book, if I would be suitable for that. So I did the Panda book, which was with a local publisher that didn't pay very well. But after I added that to my my portfolios, now suddenly all the publishers were like, oh, you know what? I guess it can work. Your style can probably work for picture books. Now I don't have any trouble getting picture books, though I do more often younger audiences, board books. I do a lot of board books, which those are actually, oh, maybe I would do a little brown beak. Wouldn't that be cute?
Yeah, definitely fit with the with some of the keywords.
Although this guy is he's so round that maybe I want a little bit of a pointy edge here to have some variety in the design.
Right, that's the word I was looking for. Unity and variety. I just forget the words too. I mean,
yeah. Okay, so let's add some line details. Okay, I have a layer here. So I use the brush Fontania. It's from Kyle Webster. And if you have Photoshop, you can get all these Kyle's brushes for free. When I was in college, I bought all of these packs, but now Adobe snatched him, and now he works for them, so it's all included. And he does the best brushes in the industry. So
they are pretty amazing.
Yeah, for Photoshop, definitely he's the master. So this brush, I don't know if you can see.
Oh yeah.
Maybe if I delete my sketch.
Yeah, nice little rough edge.
Oh, it's a little bit transparent. It has a little bit of texture, and I don't know. I like it. I think it adds a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit of life.
Yeah.
On top of the vector. Since I work in vector, it's sorely needed sometimes. Okay, maybe I would do a few here in the orange part as well. So it looks like it's still part of the same texture.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. Usually I do all of my lines on the same layer too. And
Oh,
if
interesting.
yeah, it's easier for me because I end up with so many layers that if I were to look for the right one, that would take forever. So usually if I need to modify a color, then I just go on my lines layer and then I'm just gonna lasso it and change the color. And it just helps me that it's on the, or sometimes I can add a layer on top and clip it and then change the color this way. Just there's so many ways to do it that I don't sweat it so much.
Yeah. Do you ever do the use the, I can't remember what it's called. Hold on. I think it's the move tool to find your layer.
Oh yeah, I do that sometimes.
Yeah, like
The
if anybody
select
doesn't,
tool?
yeah.
It's so useful sometimes when you have a ton of layers and you're like, where the hell is it? You can do auto select. And then if I click here, it's gonna go there. So here, this one, it wasn't in my folder for some reason. So if I were looking for it, especially since I'm going fast and I didn't name anything and I have shape 1, shape 2, shape 3, shape 4,
Yeah.
I could be looking forever, like, which one is it? Isn't this one? No, it's not this one. It's not this one. I could be looking forever. So you can just do auto select and then you click on something, it tells you where it is. But most of the time I keep it unclicked because if I want to move stuff around, like if I wanted to move this, if this was auto selected and I wanted to move this and I would click, it's not moving the thing that I want because it's selecting something that I don't want.
Right. You can also just keep it unselected, unchecked, and then hold Control and then click where you want, and it should select that layer.
Oh, magic! I did not know this.
Yeah, because I had the same problem. Like I don't want to keep it on. And then, like then if you hold Control, I think on Mac it's Command. It'll select that layer and then you can move it around.
You know, I've been using this program for 15 years and I still learn things every day.
I think everybody only knows 10% of Photoshop. No one knows more than that. It's all the different 10%, but it's only 10%.
Did you know that Photoshop can do as animation capabilities?
I haven't used it yet, but something I've got on my list.
It sucks. It's not great animation, but you know, recently because I did study animation, but nowadays I do illustration mostly. But one of my clients was like, we need kind of this little animation, tiny. We see on your resume that you worked, like you did animation. Can you do that? And I'm not going to get a license for an animation program just to do this tiny little thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I cobbled it together with Photoshop. It's really not ideal, especially when you're used to a real program. But it can get the job done. I was really surprised to hear that Photoshop can do that.
Does everything.
It does everything. Most of the techniques that I use today, I learned after I left school.
That makes sense, honestly enough.
Yeah. So I thought I knew Photoshop quite well, but nowadays everything that, like the vector, I didn't know about vector until I was working in a studio. And I just opened a file that someone else had been working on and there were shapes everywhere. And I was like, what is this? Okay, here for the branch, I think I'm gonna use a clipping mask instead of doing the lines on the same layer because I don't want to have to worry about it and I want to do this.
You can have that nice organic feel of the grain.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Since the base shape is so blocky, I feel the need to add a little bit of whimsy on top. And I'm gonna reduce the opacity on this.
Whimsy should really be a technical term. Like we should be able to say increase the whimsy by 10%.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't pick any shadows for this. So I don't know if you can see, I'm just picking the color that I picked on the base, and I'm just making it a bit darker.
A bit darker and more saturated.
Darker and more saturated.
Cool.
You know it. And afterwards, maybe that wouldn't be the right one, so I would select it and adjust it with my favorite technique of adjusting everything.
That's a great way to do it. Yeah, that's a nice way of keeping control without losing track of like all the adjustment layers working together, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if I had everything on different layers and I wanted to change the color of these, actually I might change the color of these. I don't think they're dark enough. But if I had them on different layers, I would have to find them. And that's the kind of time that I don't have. Okay, so I'm just gonna add a few lines in the tail here, and then we're gonna get to the next stage. Okay, that's good enough. What do you guys
Adorable.
think? Right, I think I'm gonna get rid of this now. Don't need it anymore. The last stage is adding some texture, shading. So I do this directly on the shape itself because I need the clipping mask. And I use this watercolor brush. It actually isn't one of Kyle's because Kyle has some watercolor brushes that lag like crazy on my computer. I can't remember where I got this one. For almost every, I take contracts with studios sometimes, like mobile studios and stuff. And every different contract I work on, they send me a set of brushes to match their style. So I lose track of what I got where. But this is a brush that I use all of the time. And it just does this little random, I'm going to show you on a separate layer what it does.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I really like it a lot, and it doesn't lag. So that's the one I want. Because I work on an older computer, and it cannot handle everything that I wanted to handle.
Yeah, I bet it's the texture that's doing it.
I don't know. I think it's maybe some of the smoothing or blending.
Well, I've noticed like Kyle's brushes have really, really huge texture files, you know, like 200 megabytes for the texture on some.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's insane. Like I have this example in my mind because I exported this 5 minutes before the showcase, but I just finished a digital planner. It's 138 pages and it's 30 megabytes.
Right. Yeah.
So this is just to put it in perspective. This is enormous for a texture file.
No kidding.
Yeah, I think like if you look at gosh, which class was it? It was I think it was the brush class by Lee White. The file he's got in there is even pretty big.
I would assume that the base is very big, and that can be useful because if you want to make it bigger, if you want to make it really, really big, like 1,000 pixel, this canvas here, I kept really small. Like if you look here, 100%, like this is it. I didn't want to make a too big file because I was afraid it was going to lag on the share.
Yeah.
But usually I work bigger, and sometimes I want this brush to be 1,000 or 1,500 pixels large, and sometimes it looks pixelated. Kyle's brushes usually don't. They scale pretty well. Maybe that's why they're.
Yeah, I think that's exactly
yeah.
that source file is so gigantic, so that it almost at any size, it's not going to look grainy.
Yeah, so it has its uses, but if it lags, I'm not going to use it. And I think that's true for most people.
Yeah.
There's only so much bullshit you can take.
Yeah, unless it's like 1 or 2 strokes only at the end, and you can just let your computer kind of sit there and render for a few moments. But
So
yeah, for workflow, ugh.
Yeah, so I'm just adding some textures here, and I modify the colors on the textures themselves. a lot of the times I will find that after I add the shading with the texture that I don't see my details enough anymore. So sometimes I will go lasso some of them and make them darker. It's a perpetual process of adding one thing that creates a need to modify something somewhere else, etc., etc. And okay, here, okay, I'm gonna show you something interesting. Here, this shape, the orange shape, is clipped onto the body shape. So if I wanted to clip something else on the orange shape, I couldn't do that. But I want to add some orange texture only here. So what I would do is create a new layer right above and do my thing. And then I would press Control, and you see I'm hovering here, and you can see like a little box.
Yeah.
Click here, it's gonna select the layer.
Ah.
And then I go back to this layer where I shaded, and I'm pressing on this icon to add a layer mask.
Awesome.
So it cuts with the shape of this shape. The shape of this shape. I'm so eloquent. So that's how I would do it. And I'm gonna do the same thing for the little wing here. I think I'm gonna do a little bit of, is it showing? Yeah, it's lagging, but it's showing. Do a little bit lighter, and then click, click. It's 2 clicks. It's so magic.
That's fantastic.
Really well. And over
so
here,
fast.
Yeah, my technique is pretty fast. I would say that is intentional because I'm a little bit lazy. And
Efficient.
Maybe efficient, but you know, there was a choice involved to have this simple style. I used to do like semi-realism stuff, and I wouldn't do that anymore, specifically because it takes too much time, and I'm too lazy to do it anymore. I'm really losing my voice. I'm sorry, guys.
It is all good. Talking for an hour takes its toll. And you've been talking a lot.
Thank you.
Not in the bad way. I mean, like, there's been no questions because we've all been just so interested in what's going on, and so you've been filling all the empty space. Usually, there's more questions. Yeah,
if there's more questions, you know, don't hesitate. I hope I'm not just talking so much that you don't feel like you can.
No. We're just fascinated. I am certain that we're just fascinated.
Okay, so I'm almost done here. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. And okay, the last step is a watercolor texture. Where is it? Textures. I have some that I made myself and some that I don't know that are free or that I bought. I really like this one, which I bought on DeviantArt for points.
Nice.
Oh,
years
DeviantArt.
ago. Years ago. And I still use it. Oh, wow. This is a small canvas, guys.
That is a tiny canvas. Oh, nice.
So I really like this texture has many different colors in it, because then I would clip it on since I put everything in a handy dandy folder called colors, and it just clips everything.
That's how you know when a shape works, when you could just take that and put it on a t-shirt and it'd be fine.
You know, I didn't even look at it, but it's pretty graphic designy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. No, it pops right out.
So I would do, but the photo was amazing. So I would do overlay and around 40%. And I really like how, since this texture has some blue and some red and some little spots, it just brings out a whole lot of tones that weren't there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I will just, sometimes I will turn it around, see how it looks from, but see here, I had some, in the top here, I had some light. So I don't want to cover that up and like negate my own lighting. with the texture. So I would probably do it like this. And then I'm thinking that I don't see my light too much anymore. So I would go back again. Every time you add something, you have to go back. And I would make this more light, so it pops more. And I'm thinking maybe this texture is a bit much, maybe 30%. So that's, oh, no, I'm seeing something else now.
All the
These-
little things at the end.
Yeah, these are affected by the blue here and they faded.
Ah, okay.
So I would go back and make them a little darker.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Maybe these a bit lighter because we can't see them anymore. If I couldn't make them light enough, I think I can. Yeah, I can. But if I couldn't make them light enough to pop, then I would just go the other way and make them dark.
Yeah.
My little details, sometimes I make it darker, sometimes I make it lighter. Either way works.
Awesome.
So that's my style. That's
That
how I do it.
was amazing.
Was it?
That was
Yeah.
definitely.
Any
Thank you so
questions?
much for showing.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering why are you doing vector with big shapes?
I'm not sure.
Because I see my process is fairly similar on adding textures and I start with a shape. I just draw a shape with brushes and I use that as a base and then add layers on top. Yeah.
That's how I used to do it. But then, like
Yeah.
I said, when I started in the studio, people were using shapes, and I started using them because when I had to work in their files, I wanted to follow their method so that it wouldn't go all chaos.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I guess I really like this method. It's faster for me. Like, you see how fast I did this? If I do it with a brush, it would take me longer. And I don't know, I like the look. When you draw it with a brush like you do, Shane, it's softer, and that's beautiful. Like, your style is so beautiful. But for me personally, I like the contrast of the clean cut shape and my texture on top. I think it's kind of unique, and I ended up liking it, so I kept it.
Yeah, it's got a very signature look to it.
Yeah.
And it's fast, which is a big plus for me.
Talking about picture book artists with using vector, I actually saw a very good example, another example as well. It's a book called Tomorrow I'll Be Brave.
Let's Google that.
The author, she's a type designer, like handwriting type designer. So she made a book. I think she did the whole thing in vector.
Did you say I'll be brave?
Tomorrow, tomorrow I'll be brave.
Tomorrow I will be brave.
I don't remember.
With a rabbit and a unicorn, it looks like.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let's see. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the book. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The whole thing is done in vector, and she's type designer. I think she did 2 books. The other one called Tomorrow I'll Be Kind. Yeah.
Wow.
Very cool.
It's very cool.
And she's obviously using the type very prominently.
Yeah, it's very conceptual. I think the words is so beautiful, and the writing is also very beautiful.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks for sharing. Even when I was drawing like really realistic stuff, I was always admiring artists like Emma Martinez. Whoops. Illustration.
About the Argent.
There we are.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's the kind of style that I was admiring, and I was spending like 100 hours on doing a painting that was completely realistic. But what I wanted to do was this.
I know exactly what you mean.
I didn't know how to do this. I was like, how do you do this? It's black magic.
Yeah, I feel the same way when I look at the Christopher Robinson's work. I want to do something like that, and I spend like 1 week to paint something very detailed.
Yeah, but I spent a long time in college just really not liking my style at all and wanting to change it, but not being sure how. And in the end, I had I had a class where the teacher would tell us how to copy others' style. It's really important in animation because when you're on a production, you want your style to look like everyone else's. You want to look
Yeah.
like one person
That's a good
made
point.
projects. So this class, we had to pick a property, whatever it was, let's say Kim Possible. And we had to draw fan characters of Kim Possible that looked like they could pass as a real character in the show and copy the style as much as possible. And we
Nice.
did this all semester. So I got to try like 20 different styles. And that's when I like expanded my gallery, my mental gallery of like different ways that you can simplify. And I started picking from there and continuing this exercise in my personal life until I found the style that I really liked.
See,
Awesome.
my problem is that I like too many styles. I want to try everything. That's the problem. Yeah, I like my style. I looked at Christian Robinson's like, oh, tomorrow I'll sit down and do paper collage.
Yes,
Uh,
that is a problem, especially like there was a point when I started working in a studio, I hadn't developed this style yet, and for a long time I didn't do any personal illustration because I was just working in the studio all day and relaxing when I was at home. So it was a few years later that I developed this style, but I was basically a copycat artist for 3 years. And I would just see all these beautiful things. I was like, that's beautiful. I could do something like this. Oh, that's completely different. It's beautiful. I could do something like this. And just completely lost. It's what should I do? Which style should be mine?
it's tough. It really is.
It's a conundrum. There's so many different beautiful ways that you could do it. But it is very important when you have a portfolio to do one signature style. So
I'm sometimes I wonder if this is really a personality issue rather than like the one style, multi-style question. Like I almost giving up or settling down with one style because I just think it's not possible for me.
I think everyone has that problem sooner or later. Like it's something I hear about from everybody. Like finding your own style is difficult for everybody. Almost no one sits down and says, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is perfect. It's done.
But it changes too. I mean, over time.
Oh,
it
absolutely.
does. And that's something, it's very scary when you develop your style. It's so scary because you think, I have to pick one style and then that's it. I'm stuck with it for the rest of my life, so I better like it. But it's not like that.
I can't ever change it. Yeah.
Hi, I just sent a link to another children book illustrator. Her name is Lorena Alvarez Gomez. And I think it's vector based if you want to check it out.
I wish I could show it on the screen, but I can't see the chat.
It's the, okay.
That's interesting.
I can stop sharing my screen and someone can pick it up, maybe. I think we're done here. I'm gonna stop sharing.
I think you can stop sharing. It's all good.
And someone else.
Thank
you. That artist is from the Bride Agency. That was the one I was eyeing. That was the one I wanted. It's not the one I got, but
That's very cool art.
Everyone from the Bride Agency is wonderful.
All right. I think we can actually call it there. If you're all done, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. You gave me a lot to think about.
I hope it was helpful. Thanks for coming.
Very helpful.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and next week we have Shin, right?
Yeah.
And you'll be telling us some about your first publishing job.
Yeah, I'll just walk through my process of how to communicating with the editor.
Cool. So
everybody. I won't be doing the drawing demo, but I'll go through, like, I just gather all the information in the presentation, just go through what happened the moment she contacted me and towards the end of the job.
Awesome. So everybody bring your questions. Think about what you want to ask.
That sounds amazing. I'll be there for sure.
Cool.
Thank
all
you
right.
so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
I'll see you later.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.